either your computer in a split screen or you want to put it on to maybe your phone, please use the code at the bottom right hand of the screen, or you can go to slido.com and the code is #LM160721, which is today's date. So for those of you who are just joining us, please be patient whilst we wait for a few more people to join us. We'll just give it another 30 seconds and then we'll get going. So welcome for those of you who are joining us. Looking forward to today's session, which is looking about transforming supply chain efficiency. We've been having a brief conversation before you joined us, and I think there are a number of issues and a fascinating session ahead of us. So I think what we'll do is we'll actually start. We're recording this session, so people should be able to pick up where we are. And I think what we'll do is we'll start with the poll, if we could please, Abraham. If you haven't yet taken the opportunity, the information to join the poll is on the left-hand side through your QR reader or by going to slido.com and entering today's code. So let's run through the first question then. To what extent do you agree with this statement? Surviving 3 lockdown periods has encouraged us to be more creative and innovative. So if you believe that you strongly agree with that, we have adapted, we've innovated, please tick that. If you agree, we look to introduce some improvements. If it's neutral, fine. If you disagree, or if you strongly disagree, if you could please choose one of them. Okay, let's move on to the next question. As a customer, what is your main priority in selecting suppliers? So you have a choice. Can we put the choice up here, Abraham? First choice is, Abraham, can we show the choice at all on the screen?
No, it's the ranking, so
right.
not sure.
Okay, so you have a chance to now rank. So as a customer, what is your main priority when selecting suppliers? So if you'd like to take a moment to choose your choice, please do rank them. Okay, if we now move on to the third question. Again, this is a ranking question. Why do you think your customers continue to work with you? Okay, we could perhaps now move on to the next one, please, Abraham. To what extent do you agree with this statement? Incorporating off-site manufacture has brought benefits to our projects. So again, you have a choice of strongly agree, a neutral, disagree, or strongly agree. The question is, incorporating off-site manufacture has brought benefits to our projects. And lastly, please, Abraham, if we can have it. Now, what is causing your biggest operational headache right now, summarized in 1 to 2 words? So you can have 2 words. This is a bit of an experiment for us because the algorithm should actually pick out very similar words and put them in a hierarchy, in a cluster. So let's have a go. What is causing your biggest operational right now, summarized in words? So 6 people have kindly completed it, but if you haven't yet finished and you'd like to, don't worry, because what we're going to do is we're going to take these answers after Hannah has given her talk to us. Now, if we can stop screen sharing, Hannah, sorry, Abraham, I'm going to introduce Hannah. Hannah is taking a brave step, she tells me, because her experience and her background has been in manufacturing. And what she's really wanting from today is feedback on what she shares with us. Her background is manufacturing and supply chain. And so at the end, we normally do feedback, and you're very welcome to give Hannah feedback through the written way. But during and towards the end, if you'd like to give feedback as to how applicable you actually think her approach could be to the construction sector, she'd really welcome that. So Hannah, I won't say anything more. I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to hearing this. Many thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Howard. Okay. So thank you everyone for this opportunity, and it's great to see a few people joining us. So we all must be passionate about this subject or equally frustrated, one or the other. I'm really pleased to be a new member of the Construction Excellence Midlands Association. And yeah, as Howard said, I just am really looking for some feedback now on an innovation idea that I'm working on and how it's applicable in the construction industry. So quick bit about myself. So my manufacturing engineering background actually started in tarmac, which is borderline cusp of construction industry, I suppose. I spent 8 years there and put lean manufacturing principles to the test. Was hands-on involved in quarries, asphalt plants, concrete plants, and I know the supply chain issues and pressures of getting materials out and on time. Another notable point of my career was my period at IESA, who are an outsourced procurement provider within the manufacturing supply chain, and they're a digital disruptor of indirect procurement and engineering stores management. Now there I progressed to head of digital, managing the IT department and the award-winning marketplace. We used to always compare our marketplace with a mini Amazon. So we were always looking to the best practice of Amazon. So there I moved from engineering to software engineering and leadership. And I took the brave step in December 19 to start my own business, building on all my experience to try to help SMEs to digitalize, but particularly looking at engineering and manufacturing and hopefully construction, which is moving towards off-site manufacture as well. So within 18 months then I have managed to be fortunate enough to grow my business as well. It started off with myself and an outsourced developer for the software solutions that I provide my clients. And now I have a team of 4 on the payroll just to help with the delivery side. So that's a bit about me. But so back to basics really. So what is efficiency? I learned all about, as I said, the manufacturing and lean principles in tarmac. And everything I do, I have done since that start of my career, is always going back to basics, looking at what's the process we're following, what are the inputs, where are we transforming things, where are the bottlenecks, what are we outputting, is that right first time, and looking to the customer, what they want. I always look at 8 wastes as well. So through the tarmac career, it was more about physical lean implementation, and throughout the latter half of my career, it's then been about using technology and digital to create efficiencies. Very passionate about people, process and digital. And yeah, the wastes that frustrate me most are probably waiting or the defects, so not getting things right first time. So Hanatech, I created that as a consultancy specialising in digital process improvement. So that builds on the whole lean methodology of taking a process, or within a supply chain, there's many joined up processes in a value stream, and using technology to improve. So at its simplest, what we do is we take manual and paper based processes with data that's hidden and not real time, and we automate and digitise that, working with clients right through from identifying opportunities through to implementation, through to training at the end and transforming and helping those clients build their roadmap journey. looking to save time and cost and make them more efficient in a digital world. Our mission statement is to work with traditional factories within manufacturing, moving them towards factories of the future, one quick win at a time. So the one quick win at a time is the true Kaizen principles, so that culture change of let's just keep improving, no matter how small, to get people on board. And then we can look at the disruptive change after that once we've got an embedded culture change. So here's a typical client that I tend to deal with. This company happens to be an anodizing company based in Staffordshire. So some of their clients they're supplying into the construction industry. And what I see with my SME clients are they're fully paper-based initially. So what that hides is them being able to work out where things are and how efficient parts are, which then impacts the supply chain or impacts their customers, because they're not able to accurately then pinpoint sometimes where parts are as well. So what we did with this client and what we do with many clients is we lift the process, digitize it to get some real-time data to reduce any errors and duplication of handwritten information and all that archiving of paperwork and scanning and all the inefficiency at the end, to help them digitize, to work out where the controls are that we can put in place, where can we put real-time insight and information and error proofing and alerts. We've also moved to electronic PODs as well. So that's just an example of a typical client that we work with. But why change? So why is digitization such a large, a common buzzword really now, and has been for a few years? I would like you to think about how many times already today you have checked your phone, because this cements how the world has changed. So for me, if I just read out a few things of my journey this morning, I was woke up by my Alexa alarm and I asked her to go on snooze. The second alarm, I then woke up and I started checking my apps on my phone. I think everyone does this, but let's see. I looked at the weather because I know we're in for a heat wave. I checked Google Maps to see if the traffic was building up on the M5, M6 based by me, thinking I was off for a client site visit, which actually wasn't today, but anyway. I checked my calendar and my emails. I'm now getting a daily to-do list from Microsoft, Cortana, which is nice. That's very helpful. I checked and scanned LinkedIn. No other social medias today, but I looked at the LinkedIn one. I decided to check and scan my bank balance because I'm expecting a payment off a customer today, just to see if there was any sight of that. I then looked at Amazon because I'm awaiting a parcel and I wanted to see if it was en route already. Then I decided that was enough of my phone, and that was probably in the span of 10 minutes. And then I asked Alexa to play some songs I might like and started to get ready. So my clock there, my quick tally is I checked 10 different apps and had 3 interactions with Alexa. And I just think that cements the whole where the world's moving now, and in our personal lives, everything's become digital and mobile. What I find interesting then is when I work with my clients and walk through factory gates, sometimes feel like we're going back in time a little, because there's no evidence of that real-time insight that customers are used to now. So at the bottom, there's the curve is the technology adoption curve. And I think, and that's why I'm there and why I'm passionate about working in this industry, that manufacturing engineering are in the late majority. I won't say the laggards yet. So I have a couple of examples of where, how different industries have applied, going back to basics, stripping out waste, but using a bit of technology as well. So fast food industry, McDonald's, as you can see in that top left photo, there is a queue, which is inefficiency, it's waiting, there's dissatisfied customers. That would then require many operators to take the orders at the counter, which actually in itself is not a value add step. It's just an incidental step that has to be done. So what McDonald's have very recently done, and service stations have seen them crop up, is put the self-order kiosks up, which incidentally are designed like a mobile phone. There's been no scanning, they're very intuitive to use, touch screen. And what that's done is put that part of a process step back onto the customer to place the self-serve order, to free up some operators to do the value-add task of preparing food. So I just think that's a nice little example of back to basics and applying digital to strip out waste. On the other side with the drive-through, again, we've seen now, particularly through lockdown, apps such as Uber and Just Eats becoming more popular through TV advertising as well, but people are now able to order food just from sat on their sofas. So there's what's happening in consumer industry and fast food. Here's an example from my days at Tarmac. So one improvement project that I worked on was at an asphalt site in Manchester, where we had dissatisfied customers, collect drivers, waiting hours for their turn to collect their materials. And what used to frustrate them as well was that some of the national contracting trucks would actually front fill because of the urgent due times that they had to achieve. So we looked at data, we looked at the type of products that they, the standard products that they wanted. And this particular asphalt plant had many bins that they weren't utilising. So what they would do after the improvement project was bin up the standard materials each morning. And we created a physical, so this is all about the physical change first, a physical express lane for the collect drivers to go through first and not be held up by the make to order national contracting trucks. And some feedback there, faster service than a McDonald's drive-through was one. This was all done when I was there in 2010. So more than 10 years on, Tarmac has actually implemented some asphalt to go apps as a solution. So again, a digital solution to build on that physical change. Drivers now can actually book their slot. They can see in real time how much material's in the bins. And again, I just think it's a really nice example of how digital can improve processes, but ultimately then supply chains because of the knock-on effect. So why am I here? It's all about the glass factory app. I think you can hear that music, so I might wait till it finishes. So for me, the glass factory builds on the concept of Industry 4 and smart homes and smart factories. Glass being transparency. So again, I'm putting my position in the shoes of the customer, whether that's business to business customer or business to consumer customer. And so a glass factory to me, and with a magnifying glass shows, it's about letting your customers have insight into exactly where an order is and where maybe bottlenecks might be so that they can then plan. So if I move on, the problem that I see then, and that I'm not happy with as a customer, is I don't feel as a customer I'm getting enough information. I look to consumer industries again, so the likes of Argos and McDonald's, where with very short lead times, you're able to see where your order is and you're instructed when it's ready to go and collect your order. When I look into the business to business world, and through my career even at IESA, we were in the middle of supply chains. We had departments of 30 chasing orders down manually over phone or email. The information you receive as a business to business customer is an estimated due date. And sometimes at best you get the last leg of the journey covered. So with a tracking number, you know that your goods are on the truck. However, with lead times that are 2 weeks, 3 weeks plus, I don't believe that's personally good enough. So when I look to say the Domino's Pizza app, I think that's a really good novel, but good opportunity, a good application of digital and of granular transparency of information to their customers. So what Domino's Pizza have done is, rather than just have the whole orders placed, we're processing, now your goods are on the truck, they have attempted to give that extra level, that granular level of detail to their customers. So they have the prep stage, baking and quality check. So I must order too many pizzas because I've noticed this through my IESA days when I was head of digital. But what the glass factory does is takes that concept from the consumer world and tries to apply it in industry. and particularly in the manufacturing supply chains, which ultimately, hopefully, will be the construction supply chains. So that's the concept and setting the scene. This slide is just building up a typical supply chain. So a lot of the clients I work with are at some way up or down this supply chain. I'm tending to work with tier 3s and below, actually. But if this supply chain was, for example, Rolls-Royce in an aerospace supply chain, Rolls-Royce would have potentially 200 OEMs who all have their own process, but those OEMs might have one stage where they subcontract down to a tier 1. And again, the tier 1s will have their processes and at some point might subcontract down. And what you find then is we quickly start building a complex supply chain where not only do you have lack of transparency at one level, but if that then gets subcontracted down 2 or 3 stages, you have no transparency whatsoever. So the glass factory mission statement is to work and challenge, in a way, traditional supply chains and move them towards supply chains of the future, but built on transparency and facts, so facts and data. And we want to put the facts back into factories. So where I am with this product is in December, I applied for some innovation funding and that got awarded by Midlands Engine and Coventry Uni. I also registered the brand name as a trademark because to me that sets the vision of what it is we're achieving. So it's the bolt on from smart factory to glass and transparency. And development started of the minimum viable product. So the minimum viable product was then ready end of April, and I've started some pilots within aerospace and automotive supply chains of user acceptance testing. And I'm getting really good feedback back, and I'm looking to launch the app soon, like very soon, as we build through and work through some of the feedback that we're getting. So what is the app then? I'm just going to go into that in more detail. You can see on the right a screen recording of the type of features and functionality within it. So it's a bit more complex than that visual pie chart of the Domino's pizza. It builds on it, it gives more data. All the orders awaiting progress have individual updates, and basically there's just a whole drill down. So you can start at the top level of I have 100 orders outstanding at different stages. You can do a search on a specific order, a specific supplier, and just start to drill down further. If one order you're drilling down happens to be with a subcontractor, you can drill through and see what stage that order is within that subcontractor process as well. So trying to keep the user interface really simple and easy to use, but underneath under the hood, if you like, is really complex actually in terms of data matching. So what are the benefits of this then? For customers, it's that self-serve that the world's moving towards, self-serve of where are your orders, lots of transparency, lots of data at their fingertips. There's a lot of data that we are collecting within the app, so measuring things like on time in full or login, issues, complaints, non-conformances, and getting trends are all stored within the database that we're collecting. So improve customer service and communication. This is an independent platform that can have multiple supplier information on at once and can integrate with many different systems or be a standalone in its own right. What that does for the time saved on expediting orders then, we're able to either integrate with a system, maybe SAP system or ERP system direct, to send updates in real time, or you can pull information, so Excel or CSVs, again, mass information of updates that can then be updated into a different system in one go rather than many different emails and phone calls throughout the day. For the supplier then, the benefits are again granular level of information. If you think of the photos I showed you of the typical client I work with who's on paper, what this does is digitizes all of that paper flow. We're able to customize the app to collect at different stages the data that the company is interested in. So sometimes we're collecting measurements or temperature checks, for example. Sometimes it's a photo, so we can send a photo at each stage of the work in progress. Sometimes it's e-signatures. So this app has been designed to be fully customizable in terms of high level, what's the process, and then at each process stage, what is it we want to measure. So again, collecting a wealth of information, which we can then look at for a supplier and analyze efficiency, so overall equipment effectiveness, defect rates and throughput. We can do defect and incident logging. But what this does, particularly throughout the supply chain at the different levels, is provide a standardized non-conformance resolution tool as well, which complies with ISO 9001. And let's not forget that each supplier in their own right will be a customer as well. So the drill down of contract process, which is quite innovative and unique, is a benefit for both customers and suppliers. So that is all the benefits as we see it, ultimately saving time and cost. This screen recording shows the web version. So you might have planning teams or different people that are office-based versus the operations team that are out on site on the mobile phone. So we've added more functionality and more detail on the web version. One thing I didn't mention was the compliments as well. So what we're trying to do is encourage the thumbs up as well as the thumbs down issue and non-conformance logging as well. So that screen recording just shows a bit of a text chat in between a customer and a supplier. Of a compliment of something nice. You just play it again to show you the extra level of info at an order stage that you see on the desktop. So I'm going to pause it here. So at this stage, rather than the pie chart, there's actually the process flow itself, and the gold shows where we are in the process versus what's remaining. So that's just a snippet really of what the glass factory does or is designed to do and what it looks like so far with some functionality. The next couple of slides are just on a pilot that we've, one of our first pilots we started with. So Frederick Cooper are based in Birmingham and they're in an automotive supply chain. They are one level removed from Rolls-Royce. So they have had pressure applied ultimately via Rolls-Royce, but from their direct customer on where the parts are, particularly last year when there was many supply issues and constraints. And because their current process, as you can see, is paper-based and the production charts on the wall, the whiteboards, what they had to do daily and throughout was assign a runner, someone manually, to actually control where parts were and report back via a spreadsheet. So there was the need, and that's why they were one of our first pilots. So here are some action shots of now the app up and running. So the app is not quite on a small mobile phone, but it's not on a tablet, it's on a Lenovo, and it's working quite well. What the operators are doing, there was not much training required because it's quite intuitive. And as I've set the scene, the world is turning towards mobile technology as well. But this is providing dashboards and information which ultimately can be passed to the customer. Customers will also get updates in real time. So maybe email updates. Emails can say your goods are on time or arriving late or arriving early. Sometimes arriving early is just as big an issue as arriving late. So we're trying to get all that transparency automated as well. So here's a testimonial from the managing director of Frederick Cooper, our first pilot. And the key bits that he has felt is the most efficient or most improvement is that in a paint or a powder coating facility, there's many ovens and paint spraying booths, so actually physical parts can be hidden by the nature of it. So this process actually raises that and keeps a track digitally, a bit like a digital twin factory in a way, so that he can see work in progress and where it is. So I'm here really, and I want to thank you for the opportunity, but to see if there's an application for this in the construction industry as well. You might be all pulled out, but I'm going to have a go at this. I would like you to log on, please, to menti.com. And if I stop sharing, there's just one more question I'd like you to give me some feedback on. So if you could go to menti.com and put the following code in. And the feedback we're looking for is, do you see an application for the glass factory solution within the construction industry? We're happy for your honest feedback. Thank you to the one person who's so far voted. So let that go in the background. Very neutral at the moment, that's fine. I'll let that go in the background whilst we go back to the presentation. And yeah, so just to end, thank you for your time and listening. And are there any questions?
Thank you, Hannah. That's very interesting. I suspect we will get some questions as we come along. I think the poll you put up yourself prompts a bit of a discussion. Let's have a look, if we can, at the feedback from the poll we had at the beginning. So, Hannah, if you could stop sharing your screen, we can then. Great, thanks very much. Okay, what we'll do is we'll put the poll up. So the first question is, to what extent do you agree with this statement? Surviving 3 lockdown periods has encouraged us to be more creative and innovative. So 9 people took the time to answer this. So let's give the answer here. So very positive, that strongly agree, we have adapted, innovated to stay ahead. And if not, we have looked to introduce some improvements. So COVID has been used by the sector positively. So I think the first question I'd have for Hannah is this typical of what you're seeing across the sectors you're working with?
Yeah, absolutely. But one reason I asked for this question is to assess the appetite for change as well. So that's really positive and promising that people are looking to innovate and be creative with what they're doing. So yeah, really promising those answers.
And I think we'll come to a question that comes out of the Menti one a bit later on. So if we can take the second question here, Abraham. As a customer, what is your main priority when selecting suppliers? Interestingly, quality has come out on the top. Customer service, lead time. One of the sector's sort of key things of price has slipped to 4. Ethical standards, loyalty, but innovation has come last. Could we just slide it a little bit? Has innovation got any score on that at all? Abraham, yeah. So everyone's answered with different degrees. So let's go back to the first question then, or the first part, which was looking at quality. Now, you may not be aware of this, but the building safety bill, which is sort of going through the stages of Parliament at the moment, has a great emphasis upon quality post-Grenfell. So from your perspective, is this the sort of ranking you would have expected, Hannah? What would you expect normally?
Pleased that the priority on price has slipped slightly, actually, because for people to be pressed on price all the time is not is a really tough environment then to compete, isn't it? So quality, I think that has to be learned as well, unfortunately. So upfront, although you can have your bid and tender processes and have some evidence that there's quality systems in place, you won't necessarily find out if there's any quality issues until you start that relationship with the customer. And again, it might go back to data, but in terms of how do you measure that they're giving you, providing you the quality you need. Quality and customer service, great to see those at the top.
Certainly, I mean, a great part of constructing excellence mission is to improve quality, and that particularly through processes, etc. I'm sort of interested in ethical standards comes 5 on the list, but one would hope that it would move up with the building safety bill. Price, now I don't know particularly where people are sitting on price, but as we've discussed before, an issue currently in the construction sector is rising prices of materials all round. And I've been reading that perhaps in the construction sector, inflation is at the higher end of the scale to other sectors. So it will be interesting to see how people manage that. And that might, I think, lead to tighter quality and the need for your kind of product so that people can ensure they're getting their things at the right price at the right time. So let's move on to the next one, please, Abraham. Again, why do you think customers continue to work with quality customer service? Now, ethical standards has shot right up, which I think is great. And price for, well, equal for is innovation as well. So, Hannah, how is this, giving you information that hopefully is helpful? And secondly, does this align with your other work?
So lead time's quite far down. I am used to, from my experience at IESA, to have lots of pressure around lead times and delivery and on time and full. That's further down on here, which is interesting. But yeah, in terms of the construction industry, of course, you need to supply quality products. So I understand that.
I suppose the question I'd like to ask and pose is that the construction sector has been very project orientated. So how many of your clients and companies you work with are project orientated, and how much are about more of a manufacturing and a through time rather than a project?
I've worked with many batch manufacturers, manufacturing rather than like mass. So you could essentially say each batch is a project in its own right. There's a lot of sampling and design that has to be done up front anyway, and designing of jigging and things like that for a new product line, for example. So there's a big mix within the clients I work with. There's projects within what they do, but once we get the setup and the efficiency right, then it goes more on to standard manufacturer, I suppose.
Okay, let's have the next poll question, please. Incorporating off-site manufacturers brought benefits to our projects. Well, here I think is an interesting area, and certainly one for you to investigate, is off-site manufacture, because it is bringing basically building of properties, etc., and much more of what goes on in construction into a factory. And I think that there's probably huge gains for your product here. I'm no expert. Anyone wants to contradict me or whatever, please do come in. And if people want to speak, we've only got a small number of people here, but I know from some of the names we've got some people here with some real expertise in the sector and etc. And digitization is a key theme. So if anyone wants to ask a question, please do put it into the to Slido. But if anyone would actually like to join in and just ask on the floor, I'd be very happy to bring them in so that we can get some dialogue going, because I'd very much like to meet Hannah's request of what she can learn. So please do feel free to tap in, put your hand up, and we'll bring you in. And lastly, let's have a look at the last question, which was, here we go. What is causing your biggest operational headache right now, summarized in 1 to 2 words? Getting paid, I assume that's pretty much up the top. Lead in, materials and budgets, inertia, uncertainty, material supply, lack of time, and lead-in times. So there's quite a few things to talk about there, Hannah, as to how you think that your product might help people with some of these. I think getting paid, I don't think we can do much about, but things like lead times, materials, budgets. Do you want to make any comment on that?
So your terminology lead in and lead in times, is that lead times or is that a specific construction term?
If anyone put lead in, perhaps they could, yeah. Yep, okay, Tim, you've raised your hand. Abraham, could you bring in Tim? Tim, I think you're here.
Yeah, hi guys, thanks. So really interesting presentation, Hannah. Just a few observations, if I may, slightly random, but hopefully provoke a bigger discussion. I operate in the far southwest, and one of the big issues we've got in terms of supply chain consistency is how fragile that is in terms of basic infrastructure. Major crash on the M5, and we can be paralyzed for 8 hours. And if you're looking at just-in-time deliveries and just in time in both directions, so often in the far southwest, manufacturing businesses are just part of the process, and maybe 10% of the added value. So consistency through fragile infrastructure routes is a huge issue for us, and some sort of application of this toolkit looking at that would be incredibly useful. And a good example, I think rightly the survey's come up and shown how important off-site manufacturing is. If you're trying to build in Cornwall, then the labour premium is a huge issue now, which you can flatten out by getting some off-site manufacturing. But if you don't program that really accurately, and that means delivery deadlines from the point of production to site, then you're going to get very badly penalized by that. There are so many things in your model that I can see added value from. And the only one bit of pushback, perhaps if I may, is the point of payment, getting paid. I think that is something that we could be looking at through this. Cash flow management is a critical part. So often construction margins are wafer thin. Cash flow management, particularly with subcontractors, is a critical area, and many have to dip into invoice discounting. Some reference to cash flow management, payment profiling, that sort of thing, I think would be another really useful addition to this. Sorry, very random, but hopefully a few helpful comments there.
That's great. Thank you for your feedback, Tim. Just on the payment side, we can add like an electronic proof of delivery and collect signatures. That's one step towards proof, I suppose, and therefore payment that goods have been transferred. But I take your point that we could do more. There's also a point I didn't mention around when we build up a process flow, we add the lead time in per, or a target lead time per step, and also an estimated cost. And again, we can pull reports from that in terms of what margins you're making. It's not quite the cash flow itself and payment, but it's contributors towards it. But yeah, that's great.
For me, that would be a huge additional benefit out of this as a part of the toolkit. But bank reporting, financial reporting, viability assessments, project by project, that would greatly enhance that process. Sorry to come back again, but I don't want to hold the conversation. But yes, please, is the answer to that section of it.
Tim, I think if you want to carry on talking, that's fine. I mean, you're talking about things like obviously M5 delays, breakdowns, and that sort of thing. How are you finding transport generally at the moment? Because it's no secret that the whole of the haulage sector is suffering from staff shortages, and certain sectors are already warning, that there will be delivery delays, etc., just because they don't have staff to do it.
Well, so, it's a double hit. If I can just stray slightly out of the topic area, the Southwest particularly is experiencing staycation, that terrible word, at the moment. So difficult to be certain about foreign travel that a lot of people are opting for the Somerset, Devon and Cornwall beach holiday, and that peak has hit us really beneficially for hospitality and tourism. But if you're in the supply chain, if you're running a production factory in Plymouth or Redruth or whatever, and you are just part of that manufacturing process. I mean, just to give you an example, we think that out of our entire manufacturing stock, 30% of their product is first imported, which shows that we're just part of, rather than the whole of, the manufacturing process. Now, in that equation, then it is down to just-in-time delivery is down to literally half-hour slots, and a couple of our manufacturers, North Devon, for example, get penalised if they don't arrive with their product at a particular point of time. I mean, financial penalties, things like that, and hanging on to those investors when they worry about inconsistency of supply is a huge issue. So we have a sort of double hit. One, we're part of an integrated supply chain, but not the whole of it. So we're wholly reliant on consistency of delivery, and the M5 only have to have one major accident, and if it's a fatality, that can close the road for 8 or 10 hours. I mean, the dislocation is unbelievable. Weave into that staycation, which, I mean, we're seeing peak tourism as never before experienced, and then go and talk to the ops manager at Lidl's regional distribution depot at Exeter, 475,000 square feet, critical time delivery deadlines that he's handling, particularly with a lot of fresh produce and ambience, chilled or frozen, to worry about as well. And we have some huge issues. So, some of these are hugely relevant, in my view, to Hannah's model. I don't know. I mean, you can't answer every question, but for us, there's some really important stuff in here.
Just, can I ask a question back, Tim? So, how much notice are you getting when there's a delay, though? Are you having to chase that notice and find out for yourself, or are they... The answer is none at all. I mean, absolutely none at all. If there's a major crash on the M5, then it is the officer on the ground who makes the decision, and he can close the road, he can divert traffic through whatever junction he deems appropriate, without doing a risk analysis of that. So if that happens at 7:30 in the morning on the A30 corridor, and they were routing people through Oakhampton, for example, and that happens to coincide with peak school time, then tough. Suddenly Oakhampton's got a big trunk of lorries driving through the middle of it just as the schools are gearing up, is an absolute example of what could happen. Now, there's no criticism. The police have to react quickly, but they don't have the toolkit to be able to be more intuitive about another solution. Sorry, how much notice do you get if you're awaiting parts that are caught up in that bottleneck of that transport?
Unless there is a digitally aware pallet, and that is a concept that exists, or a smart logistics manager or driver, then the answer is invariably too late to adjust the production cycle. Sorry, bad answer, because it depends so much on the type of the business, but it's very inconsistent.
I don't know whether we have anyone who's listening in from the off-site or MMC, but if we do, I would imagine there's a number of sort of questions here, because I can see real applications personally for the product, Hannah, in that sector. I mean, just to pick up on Tim's point, I was speaking with someone the other day. Now, they're MMC of homes, but to actually move some of their buildings, because the buildings come in parts that are put together, one part takes up 1.5 lanes of the motorway, and they're very much in the hands of Highways England as to when they can transport these. And of course, if you're on site waiting for these to turn up, but there's been a delay, I think there are real issues. So I think if there's any sort of linking that can be done to those sorts of transport tools, I would imagine that part would be, that they'd be hands over fist after that. Anyway, we have a question here from Richard. Knowing the status of the design and approval from the designers and clients is important. Could the app be used for a project to cover the whole process?
Yes. So my background being process engineer, and I love my process maps, is I've designed the tool that we can put any process in, really. So it's very bespoke. You can design that process. So if it's a specific project, you could put your different stages of scoping, drawing, testing, whatever they are, and then track that through, and any process for that matter.
Richard, I don't know whether you want to come in and add any more, but I just think it's quite interesting that clients are the starting point for all projects. But one of the biggest things that actually impacts the whole of the project is design changes. Now, design changes are a key part of what the Get It Right initiative identified as one of the major problems. So I don't know, Hannah, what experience you have of design changes implementing supply chains with the organizations you work for.
Recently been part of a project with Atkins where they are looking at their design process and putting changes in place there. So I'm starting to get a bit more understanding of the whole construction end-to-end process. But in terms of to-ing and throwing of data and exchange of information, just that non-conformance module within my app that will handle someone raises an issue, maybe some evidence or a document or a photo, goes to someone else to review, they can feedback. It goes back to the customer who ultimately signs, are they happy or not? If they're not, they go back, they push it back. So there's already some functionality that's to-ing and throwing, which could be utilised for design changes, for example. So I can see how that application could be explored within the Glass.
Because defects is a big part of the construction sector problems. So defects, but people actually forget design changes, I say, are the biggest contributor. And we are talking about a sector that works on 5% margin, but doesn't actually realize more than about 1 to 2% on many occasions. So there's not much fat in the system. So when you talked about saving time and cost, that would, I think, be a real interest to the sector. Tim has left us, unfortunately, but I'm sure if you wanted to contact him, he may be an interesting source for you to find out more. So do we have any other questions from people? Okay, if we don't, I'm going to say thank you very much to Hannah. We do have the exit poll, and certainly if you would like to give us feedback, I'm sure I'll feed that back to Hannah, and anything you'd like to give in tips or anywhere that she might be able to learn more about the construction sector, please do put it in. Please do put it in. Did anyone more contribute to your poll on Menti? Did we only get 3?
We got 7.
Oh, let's have a look. So let's have a look. Well, let's have a look now.
There you go.
Okay. Well, there we go. So absolutely, this would help resolve recurring issues. So a positive, I think. Yes, this could help. So 5 out of the 7 thought it was good. So I hope, Hannah, it's been a useful learning exercise for you, because that's what you said you'd like to get out of it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
And thanks very much for your time. So we're going to ask people to spend a little bit of time on the feedback survey. It only takes a couple of minutes. If you could please take the time. I'm not going to ask you to do it now. You've got Slido open. We'll leave Slido open for another 15, 20 minutes. If any of you would like to get your CP certificate for attendance today, the code is CE690, and you can get your CPT certificate for there. We're going to be taking a few weeks break. We're returning on the 10th of September. We don't have our topic yet, but we have our speaker, but he hasn't come back with the topic yet. So please look out on the site. And I'm just going to thank you very much for Hannah for today, for your attendance. And more importantly, I'm going to wish you a very nice few weeks break. It looks like we're going to have some good weather for the first few days of staycation. So for Hannah, enjoy Burnham by the Sea. And to everyone else, have a great time and see you again in September. Many thanks indeed.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Hannah. Could you let us have a copy of your slides so that we could post it, Hannah?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you want any part of your presentation or anything, just let us know. We can let you have a copy of the recording and you can have it raw and you can cut it up and use it how you like.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks. Am I able to get a copy of the results, the Slido results?
Yeah, of course. We'll send them to you. Yeah. I have to say, we feedback, we vary. Not as many people complete the feedback that actually complete the beginning. So but we'll send you both. Yeah, we'll send you both. Thanks very much. And if you'd like to have a word with Andrew sometime, I'm sure he could put you in touch with people in the MMC area where I would see an immediate sort of application because it is much more manufacturing.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
And also, I think you might want to consider other sort of tools that are used in the industry. Have you heard of things like Field View?
Field View?
Yeah, you'd have a look at Field View and other sort of things. These are apps or they are handheld things that are used within the sector. So it might be useful to have a look there and see where yours fits in, where it's got more to give, and maybe how it can even work together. Yeah. So I hope you have a reasonable trip down later on today and enjoy. How long are you away for? A couple of weeks?
No, just till Monday.
Well, you're going to have great weather. It's really hot, and I can tell you it's clear blue sky. I'm baking in the garden here. So, safe travels, and thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.